My fellow Americans, let me be clear about something. I didn't want to have this conversation today. I wanted to talk about hope, about progress, about the extraordinary resilience of the American people. But I can't do that, not today. Because today I have to tell you about something that should shake every one of us to our core. This morning the Supreme Court issued an emergency order, an order that will affect 42 million Americans. 42 million, that's more than the entire population of California. And what was this emergency order about? It wasn't to protect them, it was to stop feeding them. Let me say that again, because I need you to really hear this. In the middle of a government shutdown, the highest court in our land issued an order to freeze emergency food assistance for 42 million people. Our neighbors, our veterans, our children, our elderly. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This is just politics. This is just Washington being Washington. And I understand that impulse. Lord knows, we've all grown tired of the partisan games and the political theater. But this isn't theater. This is 42 million empty plates. Understanding the stakes. Before we go any further, I want you to do something for me. I want you to think about that number. 42 million. It's easy to let that slide past you. It's easy to hear a number that large and have it just become white noise. Another statistic in an endless stream of statistics. But I want you to really think about it. 42 million people is the single mother in Cleveland working 2 jobs who still relies on SNAP to feed her kids, the veteran in rural Georgia who served our country with honor and now stands in line at a food bank, the elderly couple in Arizona on a fixed income trying to stretch every dollar to afford both medicine and groceries, the child, and yes, we're talking about children who will go to bed hungry tonight wondering why there isn't enough. That's not a statistic. That's not a political talking point. That's America, how we got here. So how did we get here? How did we arrive at a place where our government, your government, would go to court to argue for the right not to feed hungry Americans? Let me walk you through it, because the sequence matters. First, we had a government shutdown, a completely manufactured crisis, a failure of basic governance that put millions at risk. Second, a lower court judge looked at this situation and said, wait a minute, we cannot let people starve because politicians in Washington can't do their jobs. That judge issued a simple order. Provide the food assistance these families depend on. Third, and this is where it gets truly troubling, the administration didn't say, you're right, we'll fix this. They didn't say, of course we won't let our citizens go hungry. Instead, they went to the Supreme Court with an emergency request. And what was the emergency? Not hunger, not suffering. The emergency, in their view, was that they were being forced to show compassion. Think about that for a moment. Really think about it. They spent taxpayer dollars. They mobilized government lawyers. They filed emergency motions, all to win the right to not feed 42 million Americans. And they did it quietly, in the shadows. Because they knew that if the American people saw this in the bright light of day, they would be outraged. This is not who we are now. I can already hear some folks saying, Obama, you're being too harsh. You're making this too political. But let me ask you something. When did caring about whether children eat become political? When did looking out for our veterans become a partisan issue? When did basic human decency become something we have to argue about? This isn't about Republican or Democrat. This isn't about left or right. This is about right and wrong. And make no mistake, this is wrong. I've traveled this country from coast to coast. I've sat in living rooms in Iowa and town halls in Ohio. I've talked with families in Florida and workers in Michigan, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The American people are better than this. When a hurricane hits, you don't check someone's voter registration before pulling them from the floodwaters. When your neighbor's house burns down, you don't ask about their political affiliation before bringing them a hot meal and a place to stay. That's the America I know. That's the America you've built in your communities every single day. The problem isn't the American people. The problem is that we have leaders who have lost sight of what leadership actually means. A pattern we cannot ignore. Here's what troubles me most. This isn't an isolated incident. This is part of a pattern, a philosophy, a worldview that says compassion is weakness. It's the same mindset that led this administration to try, again and again, to strip health care from millions of Americans looking at people with pre-existing conditions not as human beings deserving care, but as costs to be cut. It's the same mindset that walks away from our commitments to fight climate change, putting short-term profits ahead of our children's future on the only planet we've got. It's the same mindset that cuts taxes for billionaires and corporations while asking working families to foot the bill. It's the same mindset that sees government not as a tool to help people, but as a weapon to punish enemies and reward friends. This is a philosophy that says, you're on your own, I got mine, you get yours. That's not the America that built the interstate highway system. That's not the America that went to the moon. That's not the America that created Social Security so our grandparents could retire with dignity, or Medicare so our parents wouldn't go broke just because they got sick. The America I know, the America we believe in, understands that we're all in this together, that my success is tied to your success, that we rise or fall as one nation, what this moment demands. So where does that leave us? I'll tell you where it leaves us. It leaves us with a choice. We can turn away, we can let the noise and cynicism overwhelm us. We can shrug and say, well, that's just how things are now. Or we can do what Americans have always done when faced with injustice. We can stand up, we can speak out, we can organize, we can fight back. Not with anger alone, though anger at injustice is righteous and necessary, but with action, with purpose, with the kind of sustained effort that actually changes things. Here's what I want you to understand. They're counting on you to stay silent. They're hoping you'll get tired. They're betting that you'll give up. Don't give them that satisfaction. Your voice matters. Your conscience matters. The fact that you're willing to pay attention, to care, to refuse to look away, that's what they're most afraid of. A better way forward. Now, some of you might be asking, okay, but what's the alternative? What should they have done? I'm glad you asked, because the answer isn't complicated. Just imagine if that emergency request of the Supreme Court had been different. Imagine if the administration had gone to the court and said, Your Honor, we have a crisis. This shutdown is hurting our people. We need your help to cut through the red tape, to speed up assistance, to make sure not one child misses a meal. That's it. That's the alternative. It's not rocket science. It's not some radical socialist agenda. It's basic human decency. Good governance isn't about big government or small government. It's about effective government. Government with a heart. Government with a conscience. Government that remembers who it works for. It works for you, not for the powerful, not for special interests, for you. And when it stops working for you, when it starts working against you or your neighbors, then we the people have every right to stand up and demand better. This is our test. My fellow Americans, we've talked about a hard truth today. A failure of leadership that left 42 million of our neighbors wondering where their next meal will come from. But here's what I believe with every fiber of my being. This moment doesn't define us. How we respond to this moment, that's what defines us. This is a test of our national character. And I have to believe that we will pass this test. Because I know you, I know the American people, and I know that when you see injustice, you don't turn away. So here's what I'm asking you to do.